Hal Kempfer is a retired US Marine intelligence officer and founder of Global Risk Intelligence and Planning. He joins me now from Los Angeles. Appreciate you being with us.
Well, thanks, Rosemary.
So the US has completed a second night of strikes on Iran, focusing on military targets. President Trump initially said these were retaliatory strikes for the downing of the Apache helicopter. But now we learn it's because Iran has not yet signed a memorandum of understanding. However, a Qatari delegation is currently in Tehran trying to push diplomacy forward. So what do you make of Trump's explanation for these latest military strikes to force Iran to sign a deal?
Well, initially, after the Apache helicopter went down, it was seen as a kind of a response. I don't know, retaliation, response is probably a better way to put it. It was very much scoped in. It was strictly going after very military targets, not going after leadership targets near Tehran or anything like that. So it was hitting in and around the strait and a little bit south down the Jask port as well. And then there did seem to be this shift. The shift, of course, now is that it seems to be part of a negotiation strategy, which is sign the MOU or we'll hit you again tomorrow night. And hitting a variety of targets, still military targets, although some are getting in and around some populated areas. So there is a bit of a psychological dimension to what's going on there. But it looks like this is going to continue until the Iranians sign. I think the Iranians just kind of said, hey, look, President Trump will never go back to kinetics. They were probably reading too much into what he was saying, and he kind of turned things around and went back to kinetics.
So what will Iran likely do next militarily, given President Trump is determined to continue striking Iran until the country signs a deal? And it's, of course, US military facilities in Kuwait, Bahrain and Jordan that are being targeted by Iran in this latest round of strikes.
Well, they're already doing it, which is, they're hitting Kuwait, they're hitting Bahrain, they're hitting Jordan. We have bases in Jordan. The bases in Bahrain and Kuwait I know quite well. And they're hitting those bases, or trying to hit those bases. Apparently, our air defense system is working pretty well. And I say ours is jointly with the host nations as well. So none of these drones or missiles seem to be really getting through, which is good, and hopefully it'll stay that way. But I would anticipate they'll keep doing that. Now, if we were to up the ante, if we were to do what President Trump had talked about, going after bridges and going after power plants, critical infrastructure, the concern would be that Iran would respond by hitting critical infrastructure in the Gulf states. And there is some very delicate critical infrastructure, desalination plants, LNG facilities, some other things I could think of, which would put those Gulf states in a very, very difficult situation.
And Hal, I did want to ask you what you made of President Trump's announcement of a month-long secret program involving the US Navy assisting ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz and moving 100 million barrels of oil.
Well, I kind of thought that's what was happening. I have to tell you, there was all the ships are turning their AIS off. That's a transponder. It says where the ship is. They turn it off because it's a high-risk area. So you don't see the AIS feed. So when you look at the map, the electronic map saying, look at the ships, they're not going through the strait. Yeah, well, they're not broadcasting they're going through the strait. And they're going through this lane that's really close to Oman. Interestingly, very close to where that Apache went down. And they were moving. Now, not the volume, but I had indicators that there was a lot more activity, not AIS feeds, obviously other indicators, there was a lot more activity, a lot more movement going through the strait. So I wasn't really surprised. They said it's a secret program. I think for a lot of people out there, it wasn't as secret as they probably thought it was. But there's a lot of movement going through the strait. But again, not bringing enough oil to replicate what was lost. On the other hand, I think this is part of the what's kept the Brent crude price a little bit lower, is that there is quite a bit coming through.
Right, and of course, not a secret now. So, Hal, what President Trump insists and keeps insisting that Iran's military is defeated, but they're still launching missiles, drones, and of course, small boats at various targets. So, what is the actual status of Iran's military?
Well, their military has been really decimated. I mean, their Navy, the regular Navy's gone, the regular Air Force is gone. Tremendous amount of attrition on missiles. I know that goes kind of back and forth as to how many were taken out, as long as launcher systems, drones, command and control. In fact, some of the strikes that you see, some of the response from Iranian forces from the IRGC, is somewhat attributed to the fact that they don't have good command and control. So a lot of times these local commanders will launch something or fire something simply because they can't get higher headquarters confirmation. Should I do this or not do this? So they just go ahead and attack. So in that regard, it's been very successsful. Now we don't have a ground campaign. So when you take out all these systems without a ground campaign actually moving forces across Iran, it is kind of difficult, and they do have some capabilities that they're using. So, basically the hope is that eventually the regime collapses of its own accord, but that could take a while.
Hal Kempfer, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective and analysis. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary.
Of course.